Pablo Escobar. He built his own prison, luxurious, isolated, and completely under his control. What looked like a brilliant deal was actually a ticking time bomb. Inside La Catedral, he didn't live like a prisoner, but like a king. There were parties, visitors, alcohol, and most importantly, continued control over his operations. Rivals were brought inside, interrogated, and in some cases killed within the walls. The government had hoped this would neutralize him, but instead, it became a symbol of his power. The turning point came when the truth about what was happening inside leaked to the public. Political pressure exploded, and suddenly the government could no longer ignore it. When soldiers moved in to transfer him to a real prison, it was already too late. He escaped. That moment destroyed the fragile deal that had protected him. From then on, he wasn't just a criminal. He became the top target of a nationwide manhunt. Special forces, international support, constant surveillance. Entire neighborhoods were searched, phones monitored, and every known contact investigated. He spent months constantly moving, hiding on rooftops, changing safe houses, and trying to stay ahead of authorities closing in from every direction. In 1993, he was finally tracked down and shot by Colombian security forces while attempting to flee across the rooftops of Medellin. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. He escaped from maximum security prisons twice, once hidden in a laundry cart, and later through a highly engineered tunnel built directly into his cell. These escapes turned him into a legend, untouchable, invisible. But that image slowly began to change how he operated. With growing fame came the desire to control his own story. It was no longer just about surviving in the shadows, it was about shaping a legacy. A secret meeting with actor Sean Penn was meant to do exactly that. But the meeting left traces, contacts, communication channels, movement patterns. Investigators used every detail to piece together his location. What seemed like a small step was actually a major shift in strategy. Instead of staying hidden, he stepped closer to the spotlight. Instead of caution, he showed confidence. Authorities eventually traced communications connected to the meeting and launched a large operation to locate him. In 2016, he was captured after a raid in Mexico, later extradited to the United States, and sentenced to life in prison under some of the strictest security conditions in the federal prison system. Griselda Blanco, an empire built on fear. Violence wasn't just a tool, it was a message. Hits were carried out with precision, often using motorcycles, fast, efficient, and deadly. Over time, this method became a recognizable pattern. And that was the problem. Investigators began connecting the dots. Same methods, similar execution styles, repeating structures. What once created efficiency now created traceability. Every act left behind pieces that could be linked together. At the same time, her lifestyle became increasingly visible. Wealth, influence, presence. Impossible to ignore. She became one of the most feared figures connected to the Miami drug wars, and the violence surrounding her operations drew massive attention from law enforcement. The combination of brutality and exposure made her a clear target. Eventually, she was arrested, later convicted in the US, deported back to Colombia after serving time, and in 2012, she was shot and killed in Medellin in a motorcycle-style attack similar to the methods once associated with her organization. Frank Lucas. His greatest advantage was invisibility, direct supply chains, minimal reliance on middlemen, and a system that stayed under the radar for years. While others drew attention, he operated quietly in the background. But success brought change. Wealth was no longer hidden. It was displayed. Expensive clothing, public appearances, a lifestyle that didn't match his previous low profile. One moment was enough to spark attention from investigators who began questioning where the money was coming from. From there, everything shifted. Surveillance increased. Connections were analyzed. Networks mapped out. What had once been invisible slowly became visible. His mistake wasn't a single event, but a gradual transformation from secrecy to visibility. As authorities dug deeper, they uncovered large parts of his operation and eventually arrested him. He was sentenced to decades in prison, though his cooperation with investigators later reduced his sentence significantly, allowing him to eventually return to public life years later. Amado Carrillo Fuentes. A fleet of aircraft allowed massive quantities to move almost undetected. Routes were optimized, operations refined, risks calculated. For a long time, the system worked with precision and made him one of the most powerful traffickers in the world. But with success came pressure. His name became known, attention increased, and the pursuit intensified. Eventually, there seemed to be no safe place left. The solution was extreme, completely altering his identity through plastic surgery. It was a plan meant to erase him and allow a new beginning. But it came with enormous risk. The procedure was complex, his condition strained, and the circumstances far from controlled. Instead of disappearing, the operation became his downfall. In 1997, he died during the surgery before he could ever escape under a new identity. The doctors connected to the operation were later found murdered, adding even more mystery and fear to the aftermath of his death. Carlos later. A remote island became one of the most important drug transit hubs in the Caribbean. Planes landed, were loaded, and took off again toward the north. Strategically, it was highly effective. But unlike others, he didn't just pursue efficiency, he sought visibility. Political ambitions, public appearances, and outspoken views made him a visible figure. His statements against the United States and his growing public profile attracted far more attention than most traffickers wanted. While others stayed hidden, he openly embraced publicity. That combination made him a priority target. Investigations intensified, international cooperation increased, and pressure from multiple governments continued to grow. In 1987, he was arrested, extradited to the United States, and sentenced to decades in prison. After serving many years behind bars and facing serious health problems, he was eventually released and deported. Freeway Rick Ross. A system built on consistent supply can only survive as long as the source remains stable. Access to large quantities at low cost created a massive advantage. It fueled rapid expansion and huge profits across Los Angeles during the crack epidemic. But that dependency became a weakness. The connection that enabled his rise was more complex than it appeared. Behind the scenes were structures he didn't fully control or understand. As investigations moved closer, the fragility of the system became clear. Information surfaced, links were uncovered, networks exposed. His influence wasn't enough to stop it. His mistake was trust, in a system he relied on but never truly controlled. Eventually, he was arrested and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Years later, after his release, he publicly spoke about his past and the consequences of the drug trade, warning others about the damage it caused. Manuel Noriega power at the highest level, combined with international connections and strategic influence. For years, it seemed possible to navigate between competing interests. Information was traded, alliances leveraged, decisions adjusted depending on who offered the greatest advantage. But the balance was unstable. Over time, political priorities shifted, and relationships began to collapse. What once offered protection slowly turned into a threat. Trying to serve multiple sides became increasingly dangerous as pressure from the United States intensified. When the balance finally broke, the response was immediate. In 1989, U.S. forces invaded Panama during Operation Just Cause. After days in hiding, he surrendered and was transported to the United States to stand trial. He was later convicted on drug trafficking and racketeering charges, spent years imprisoned in multiple countries, and eventually died in 2017 following complications from brain surgery.